I think I have enough tape left on this side to give you a sample of the death camp singing of the choir at Gary Church sings on in connection with the singing of the beautiful I Know That My Redeemer Lives. I remember the time when I listened to that sunrise service, 6 o'clock Easter Sunday, chills went down my back. It was so beautiful as the sun struck the beautiful resurrection window on the east or left side of the church that you enter, the other side of the Christmas window. Now here's the choir and the singing. can tell by that even this tape is somewhat damaged, but the singing comes through much better than the abbreviated part of the recording of the Vespers, where this song is just briefly starting the service. You'll find it on the other side of this tape. What a wonderful sentence on the end there. My Jesus still the same. I know that my Redeemer lives, what comfort this sweet sentence gives. I'll never forget that service. It was so beautiful. And it was just a year before I had my heart attack. And the Lord gave me the privilege to reach this peak in a ministry to Him, all to His glory alone.
Gottfried Naumann with the opening prayer. Lord Jesus, thou victorious peace defender, who was delivered for our offenses and raised again for our justification, praise and thanksgiving be unto thee for thy triumphant resurrection, by which thou didst give us the blessed evidence of the all-sufficiency and acceptance of thy sacrifice offered on the cross. Let us experience the power of thy resurrection in establishing our faith, enlivening our hope, and inflaming our life. May we not only believe thy resurrection, but partake of it, that like as thou wast raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also might walk in newness of life. In all our difficulties and distresses, let us rejoice that he who was dead is alive again, to defend us, to plead for us, and to supply us with strength and help. When called to mourn over the loss of our departed ones, we would not sorrow as those who have no hope, but comfort ourselves with the assurance that they who sleep in Jesus will God bring with them. When looking forward to our own departure, may we with humble and holy confidence be able to say, I know that my Redeemer lives, and though after my sin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God. Grant the glorious message of this day unto the ends of the world, so that indeed all the families of the earth may be blessed. With fervent hearts and holiness be exalted, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again unto a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled, and that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for us. To thee, the one suffering, but now living and reigning Savior, be glory and honor and adoration forever and ever. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen.
And now we continue our Easter broadcast with the combined voices of the St. John's Choir and Children's Choir singing Jesus Christ is risen today.
resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead is the greatest miracle of all ages. Nothing men can do, sing or say, elaborate sunrise service, not even the finest productions on radio or television in attempting to dramatize this event can add to its sheer divine glory. It stands there in its majestic simplicity in the center of the Christian creed. The third day he rose again from the dead. Out of the seemingly confused accounts of the various evangelists, who nevertheless with absolute truthfulness took to the excitement that must have gripped the women and the disciples of Christ on that first Easter day, one fact stands out with crystalline clearness and repeats itself with the insistence of a grand motif in the glorious symphony of the Easter Gospel. That one is, Christ is risen. The minds of mortal men cannot conceive of death in any other way than that it is the end, and that someone should rise from the dead by his own power, leave the grave, actually conquer death, is beyond human experience, beyond human science and wisdom. It is a miracle. And if the resurrection fact itself is miraculous, so were also the effects of this momentous act. The resurrection of Christ stands there as a miracle of all time, and its effects too are startling. As there are but two kinds of people on earth, believers and unbelievers, friends and enemies of the risen Savior, for he himself has said, "He that is not with me is against me." So the effect of his resurrection is twofold. It means fear for his enemies and joy for his friends. And that effect is still the same after 19 centuries. Let us from the Easter story view the marvelous effect of Christ's resurrection. Early on Easter Sunday, the women went to the grave. The Sabbath had ended, and in the early light of the new day, they started their sad journey toward the garden and tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. They wanted to take one more leisurely look at the grave and carefully embalm the body of their beloved master. But even before they came to the vicinity of the sepulchre, wonderful things had happened. Unseen by mortal eyes, Jesus' lifeless body had come to life and had left the tomb. Jesus Christ had risen from the dead. He now lives forever, never to die. And this fact was to strike confusion and terror in the hearts of all his enemies. Now his enemies were not only those who had crucified him. His enemies were far greater and more powerful. For behind all the fury and hatred that brought suffering and death upon Christ stood the mighty prince of hell, Satan himself. It was the great battle against the old serpent, foretold already in the Garden of Eden with the words, "I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed," that was fought there on Calvary. And when Jesus bowed his head in death on the cross, how all the demons of hell must have howled with glee, how Satan must have triumphed. But now, who was this entering the stronghold of hell, the prison house of Satan? None other than the crucified, but now risen and triumphant Christ. How these spirits of evil and darkness must have retreated now, cringed, and hid themselves in shame and sorrow of everlasting defeat at the sight of the victorious, risen Lord. He had said that he had come to destroy the works of the devil, and he had kept his word. But not only was there fear and confusion in hell, also his enemies on earth were to feel cold terror strike into their hearts. At the rising of the sun, we are told, before the women came to the grave, the earth shook with a mighty earthquake. An angel descended, and his appearance was like a blinding flash of light. He rolled away the ponderous stone with little regard for the imperial seal, his golden and empty grave. Witness of this fearsome, majestic, and awful scene were the soldiers watching at the grave. These men were trained to be fearless in the face of danger and death. Yet now we're told they were as dead men resurrected. Some of them came pale and panting to the chief priest, to tell them the terrible news. What fear must have gripped their conscience when they recall the cruelty and fearful indignity they had heaped upon the Son of God with recklessness because they did not believe in him. The message of Christ's resurrection struck fear into the hearts of the enemies on that first Easter day. It still brings dread and consternation to the ranks of his enemies today. Woe to all the open and hidden enemies of Christ. With eyes flashing in fiery anger, he will sooner or later reveal the hidden recesses of sin and shame. If not here on earth, then on the last day of judgment. The risen and living Christ shall appear with all his holy angels, and sitting on the clouds of heaven, shall fill the hearts of his enemies with utter, nameless terror. Of this, the last book of the Bible paints a fearful picture, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bound man, the free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who shall be able to stand? But now let us turn to the rest of the story. In the meanwhile, the women, true and faithful friends and followers of the Lord, came nearer to the grave. All at once they remembered the heavy stone that had been rolled in front of the grave, and they are deeply worried. But now suddenly they saw, in the first clear rays of the risen sun, that the stone had been rolled away. Alarmed, they moved closer. They looked into the grave. Filled with terror, they are rooted to the ground. But the same angel, who with his dramatic appearance paralyzed with fear the keepers of the tomb, now addresses the women with calm, soothing, and friendly tone. Fear not, for I know you seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here. He is risen. Full of fear and trembling and holy joy, they hasten from the grave. On the way, Jesus confronts them, and they are assured beyond any doubt that he is truly alive. Their hearts are filled with joy and peace in believing. Friends, there's only one way to look at Easter, and that is to accept the message, he is risen, with joyful, believing hearts. True, there is much that may even now upbraid our conscience, but it is for our sins that he died and rose again. By his resurrection, he conquered death, the punishment of sin. Having abolished death, he has abolished all sin. Those that believe in him are no longer under the condemnation and curse of God, but joyfully free. The living Christ is now with us and assures us, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And he that liveth and believeth in me shall never die. So no matter what your past has been, whether you are educated or uneducated, rich or poor, in health or sick, living or dying, he is your Savior. In his power, you can on this Easter day rise by faith to him, to a new life, and live with him forever. Tune then your heartstrings to the hallelujah chorus of the heavenly host at the glorious resurrection of your Savior and Lord. Lift your souls to a higher plane of spiritual life. Let your Easter joy not only fill your mind, but let it penetrate your heart and fill your whole being. Break through the indifference and coldness and exclaim in joyful adoration and praise, he lives, my kind, wise, heavenly friend. He lives and loves me to the end. He lives, and while he lives, I'll sing. He lives, my prophet, priest, and king. And so as life goes on, with its joys and sorrows, with its trials and triumphs, its beauties and opportunities, may Jesus, the living Lord, remain at your side. By faith in him, you pledge loyalty in him on this glorious Easter day, to him your Savior, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, truly, the Lord God omnipotent reigneth. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Naumann, for your intermission. The Reverend G.H. Naumann is pastor of St. John's Lutheran Church, located at 10th and Taft Street in Gary, Indiana. And now here is the St. John's Lutheran Choir singing The Strife Restored.
thou mighty resurrected Lord, thou didst descend into the depths of death and hell, and so thou mightest pay for sin and redeem us to God by thy blood. But now thou hast burst the bonds that held thee. Thou hast conquered all our foes. Thou hast led captivity captive. Our redemption is sure, and so is our life, a life which we have from thee, and which we live in thee, a life which lasts at death, and never rejoices in hope. O cause our life to abound yet more and more in us,
unto life everlasting. Here then, suddenly and abruptly, the tape ends. I added a few last words of prayer to us, but it means so much to know that we still hold those old truths which God permitted me to complete for 40 years. The original tape will now be deposited in the family archive here at Newbury Park, California. God bless you all.
We are very pleased to have with us tonight Reverend Naumann, who's a retired Lutheran minister.
That's right.
Is it working? I didn't think it was working. Is this working?
No.
Okay.
That's all right.
I'm going to give you now the Reverend Naumann.
Thank you, Linda. Dear Melting Pot, we just gave our wonderful salute to the flag of the United States of America. Many, many people came over here, and among them, even before we became a nation, were many Germans, many Lutherans, and also from other countries. They settled particularly also around Philadelphia. It goes back to the very beginnings of our country's makings. I remember so many things about being a German American. I remember the time when I asked myself, who am I? And that's what you hear to ask yourself, who am I? Well, I'll introduce myself now. I'm the Reverend Gottfried Heinrich Naumann, Pastor im Ruhestand, which means I'm Reverend Naumann. I am retired. Very tired sometimes. I want to introduce to you a person who has listened to me very much. Every sermon I preached, I think. And she was a good critic. Will you rise and take a bow? My wife, Catherine née Reuter Naumann. That sounds good. She and I have been married over 50 years. And we're happy together. We have 4 children, all married. We have 11 grandchildren. Just the other day we had our 3rd great-grandchild. His name is David John William Naumann. He weighed 9.5 pounds, so he could carry that name. All of a sudden I find myself in the limelight of public notice. I don't know how it really happened. About 3 or 4 months ago, a lady came to me and said, we want to write up your life. We want to put it in our monthly paper for the Southern California District of Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod. Well, I gave her information I could, and she came up with all kinds of material, and an article was written, and that article had some corrections we made in it. And I'm also amazed at finding that I have changed my name since I was asked to speak here. My name is Naumann. But according to this splendid article, I don't blame the lady for putting mistakes in there. I do that myself. If you learn to type, you make mistakes. Here in this article, if you have one of these, the following things would be better understood. Of course, nobody knows the difference between Elmwood, Wisconsin, and Glenwood. I never heard of an Elmwood, so it's Glenwood. Then it says, my father accepted the post in Bangalore. Well, it was near Bangalore, good enough. But the real name of that place was Krishnagiri. My uncle, Nater, Theodore Nater, came to India and started a mission there. And he died there of the bubonic plague. And my father, in 2 years after his death, had to take over an entire work. At his death, he had to take over that work. It also tells you here that my father's name was, and is Georg Friedman. Using the last part of each of my names, they gave me a new name. So, pleased to meet myself. It tells you something about Titanic in here. What you wanted to know was, what are the Lutherans? What do we know about the different churches, their background? Where do we go for information regarding Lutheran background, our fathers, forefathers, and beyond that? I know that you know the principles of genealogical study. I don't want to repeat all that. You know children. You keep notebooks, of course. You start with yourself. You understand then, beginning with yourself, ask yourself questions. Find out also what your background is. And then you start branching out, but don't do it all together. Take one branch of your family at a time. You can run into very many difficulties in trying to cover all of that. What is the Lutheran Church, you ask? What's a Lutheran? Nowadays, we say we're Christians, or we're Jews. We belong to the Judeo-Christian religion, basing it upon the Old and New Testament. It's much more than that. I am a very conservative and orthodox Lutheran. Orthodox means to cut along the right lines, or along the bias. Correct Orthodox. I am not a blue nose. In other words, I drink beer. In fact, I have some friends in a good beer family called the Anheuser-Busch Company. I confirmed some grandchildren of the great Adolphus Busch, and that was about 50 years ago, and they still recognize me, the von Gontarts and the Orthwines. I enjoy doing that because here I could really get into the foam of the matter and realize that an ordinary little preacher in a church in Kirkwood, Missouri, could hobnob with the wealthy and teach them the humble gospel of Christ. The Lutheran Church has had a rough going as long as it has existed, but it's growing. That's true. It's growing by leaps and bounds occasionally, and then we say, what are these Lutherans? Well, first of all, I have to take you back to something that happened to me this summer. I was looking through the attic of my brother, oldest brother who passed away in 71, for some books. I knew he had them, but his widow did not recall it, where they were or what had been done with them, because she lost her only son suddenly, and so was my brother gone and his only son gone. No one knew where these books were. I looked around and I found them. And because of that, they had to write an extra article for me, too, in the bulletin or paper of our church, I found this book. This is the, you can't see a thing there, of course. This is the page which is so important in that one book. It's the Concordia, the Book of Concord. That Book of Concord is an amazing thing because it explains the Lutheran Church. Martin Luther, all by himself, managed to oppose the powers that be and thought he would reform the church. The Catholic Church needed some cleaning up, he figured. Well, they didn't go along with that idea much, that a monk in Wittenberg should have such nerve to say we're no good. But Luther insisted you have to go according to the Scripture, the Bible. And by his insistence and with the help of the Lord, he disclosed many faults and troubles in the church, Christian church at that time, which was divided into the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. Luther always said, I don't think much of the Pope, which was perhaps a bad thing to say, but he said, neither do the Eastern Orthodox Church. They have no Pope. They don't believe in him. Why make such a big thing about that? Well, Luther then, as you all know, and we celebrate his wonderful 500th anniversary a while ago, there's a medal struck in his honor. And when Luther died, there was no leader. So Melanchthon, who was a close friend of Luther and helped him in translating the Bible from the Greek New Testament, the Hebrew Old Testament into very good German. In fact, Luther produced actually the German language that was used later on in every political and literary way. Melanchthon was scared. Why? Because of the wars that were occurring already then. Charles V had conquered the Lutherans and made a peace of Smalcald. And they had an interim in the meantime to wait for the time when they could settle matters between the Lutherans and the Catholics. The Lutherans are the oldest church. Why? Because we have the oldest confession. The Augsburg Confession definitely states the stand which we take. The Catholics had many, many different popes, and they had councils, and they refer to those. But the Lutheran Church stood as a clear light before all people, as being, making all people individuals, giving them the individual liberties. Far beyond, he was far beyond, Luther was far beyond his day and age. And in doing so, he did not leave a good leader. Melanchthon, being frightened, had written the Augsburg Confession, but he thought he might change it in order to suit some of the enemies of the church, the Lutheran Church. In fact, it became quite definite that Wittenberg was no longer the center of Lutheranism after the year 1546, when Luther died. But a new group of theologians came in who started to teach Calvinism. Not openly. That's why it's called a crypto-Calvinistic controversy. Hidden Calvinism. But took place at the court of August, Elector of Saxony. Duke August, Elector of Saxony. But a letter was discovered secretly, somehow was missent, and he discovered that they were trying actually to get Calvinism, the teaching of Calvin and Zwingli and Knox, into Wittenberg, and deny the truth Luther fought for, even at the meeting with Zwingli that time at Marburg. And then Duke August said, that's the end of that. He fired all the men that tried to do this, and employed people, men like Martin Chemnitz, for instance. Even the Catholics admit if it hadn't been for the second Martin, the first Martin would have been forgotten. Martin Chemnitz, Selnecker, Andreas, Kreuziger, other men wrote their opinions, counteracting all the controversies that began to arise right among the Lutherans in their own midst. And so came to place the Formula of Concord. I'm coming back to this Formula of Concord, which establishes Lutheranism. It is a book which tells you nothing new from what Luther taught. It is a book which contains, first of all, a statement that everything is scriptural there. Every teaching contained there. Then it repeats the great ecumenical creeds. And then it writes down the Augsburg Confession, unaltered. Sometimes on a cornerstone with Lutheran Church, you'll see the words UAC, which means unaltered Augsburg Confession. Usually you're sure that's the Missouri Synod. It won't change a thing as far as doctrine is concerned. Otherwise, we go along, we're quite up to date in everything, including our clothes. Except my watch, that's the old-fashioned yet. My wife gave me 10 minutes to keep. Right. Well, let's go back to this book I found. I have the book which Duke August, Elector of Saxony, signed. He draws a hand with three fingers raised, and underneath he adds the word ita observo, which means, to this I swear. All of that in here is truth from God's word. Then he writes, Corde ora et propria manus subscribi. That's Latin for, with heart, mouth, and my own hand I subscribe. And he didn't write as big as Hancock did, but it's there. The book, the very book which his own property, I discovered then. Well, I was a little frightened. I said, I've got to get this book where it belongs and can be carefully tended to. So I took it to the Concordia Historical Institute. And if anybody wants to know his Lutheran roots, if they have anything to do with the Missouri Synod, you'll have to go to the Concordia Historical Institute on the campus of Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. Concordia was the name of that book. Concordia, Book of Concord. Concordia Seminary. We have two of those, one in Fort Wayne now, and my brother was in Springfield when I was there, and one in St. Louis. And all our colleges, except two, had the name Concordia. One had a reason to have changed the name. They were in Concordia, Missouri. That's my alma mater, nourishing mother. I graduated there. That's in Concordia, Missouri. They called themselves SPC, St. Paul's College. And the other one was in St. John's, Winfield. And I had an argument the other day. You fellows had no business changing the name Concordia. Keep it Concordia, because we want to say to this day nothing has been changed. Our doctrines remain the same for the comfort of poor sinners. We know where we stand. Now we have three large church bodies. Perhaps you've heard the new Lutheran church that's supposed to come to existence before the end of the century. The new Lutheran church will be composed then of the ALC and the LCA and the AELC. Now I tell you, when you get into those kind of names, you need a book like this to even find what the abbreviations all mean. And I have a whole list of abbreviations of all the different churches and what they are, stand for, and how to find your way around. You look at ALC, the American Lutheran Church, founded in 1960. Before that, they were ALC without the "the." And then you have the AELC, I don't know, American Evangelical Lutheran Church. That was a Swedish, Norwegian group, pardon me. Augustana is Swedish. The LCA was at a time called ULC, the United Lutheran Church. Then it's the LCA, the Lutheran Church in America. That was a combination of many synods. What's a synod? Well, let's go back just a one little bit. In 1748, Heinrich Melchior Mühlenberg in Pennsylvania founded the Pennsylvania Ministerium. Why Ministerium? Because they believed that only the pastors should get together and manage the church. Wolter, Dr. Wolter, the head and founder, 100 years after Heinrich Melchior Mühlenberg, this showed that that was wrong. That was papistic. That was hierarchical. No, you have to have a synod. You have to have pastors and teachers and laymen all together deliberate and decide not to dominate over the congregations. But we have the individual right of each local congregation as one of the main cornerstones of the biblical teaching in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Now, what is the AELC now? The AELC was called Seminex. They left our seminary in St. Louis and called themselves American Evangelical Lutheran Church. Very nice of them to call them that. But they want to join together with the other larger bodies to form the new Lutheran Church. So you'll have two churches for a while, anyway, as far as I know. Now, you want to ask questions, you may do so. Where do you go for help? Where do you go for direction to find where to find your Lutheran roots? First of all, I would suggest Concordia Historical Institute. I wrote in there about the Titanic. Or did I? Oh, I had a poem that was in there, Titanic. Then I became an archivist, ein Archivar of Deutsch, and I learned many things. I attended the Lutheran Historical Society. That's a splendid thing to belong to. It's called a conference, the LHC. Here is a report of 1982 meeting. And there you have the great men whom you want to contact. The ALC, the man is Dr. Robert C. Wieder Anders. He has an umlaut there. Always bothers me when they say about umlaut, change of names. Instead of Müller, you become Müller. Instead of saying Löwenbräu, you say Lowenbrau. They forgot the umlaut. Wieder Anders has an umlaut in Enders, A-E-N-D-E-R-S. Means his name, that's right. And then if you want to contact someone in the LCA, you perhaps will have to go to the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania place. And the man who wrote about it in here regarding depositories, the American Lutheran Church, is John A. Peterson. He said the Lutheran Archive Center at Philadelphia is the oldest archives in American Lutheranism, but at the same time one of the most recent developments as far as organization is concerned. Our collection began essentially with the founding of the Ministerium of Pennsylvania in 1748. I got that right. My wife wants to know why this is running out. I do too.
ready.
It's getting not ready. Okay. It's just like a cake. You have to bake a while. Now, those are the three centers then. St. Louis, Vida Anderson, Dubuque, Iowa, Wartburg Seminary. And the third one is Philadelphia, Mount Airy Seminary. In addition to that, there are hundreds of archives. Every school has one. Every district, and we have 54 of them in the Missouri Synod alone, has archives. The synods that compose the Lutheran Church of America are many. Some have changed their names through the years. You can read it in a book called Concordia Encyclopedia, or the latest edition, the Lutheran Encyclopedia. That contains all the information anyone ever need to find out what about the Lutheran Church, what about the origins of the Lutheran Church and its resources. Now, yes. Well, you should have one in the library here. I hope they buy one of these days. I bought this all by myself. My wife paid for it, I think. She was a nurse. I had to retire from the ministry because the doctor said you're running too fast. So I'm still golfing. That's about the best I can say about it. I hope my golf partner's hanging in there somewhere. Good old Norwegian. You know, when he addresses the ball, he does so in good old American. But when he hits the ball, sometimes he uses Norwegian. I said, I didn't understand that, but the Lord heard you. Well, we get along pretty well. I mean, we love each other and play with each other. Play golf, try to beat our age. We never do it, though, I guess. Unless we do a little cheating on the sideline, that's not permitted. The story about the Titanic is amazing. The Wisconsin Synod is also be noted because the lady here asked me, do you know Oscar Naumann? I said, yes, I know Oscar Naumann. He is my cousin. He was president of Wisconsin Synod for a long time. She had heard him too. So the Wisconsin Synod is quite large. It doesn't count among the very large synod, but used to belong to the Synodical Conference, which was composed of the Missouri Synod, the Wisconsin Synod, the Norwegian body, and the Slovak Synod. But that didn't last because of doctrinal differences. We're very careful to try to not offend anyone by saying you are a heathen and a man and a publican. We say your doctrine isn't correct. Your life may be pretty good, but if you err there, you have to be admonished by your own brethren. But if it's doctrine, we say let's look at the Scripture, and that decides it. And I'm very close to Wisconsin. We hope someday they will join us again and grow with us in the Lord. Now you may have some questions. I don't know. I wanted to say some more about. Mother wrote about her life of many blessings. She had 12 children. Many blessings. I'm the fifth one. 5 of us brothers are still hanging around. We're all retired. That's a very honorable name. Emeritus is put in the end of your name. E.M. Emeritus. Then you're somebody else, namely an emeritus. My mother says the trip will always remain in our minds. This was the time we were on a little boat following the big Titanic, in which you experienced the Lord's gracious protection in a special manner. The time was April 1912. Our boat was the Rhine, one of the oldest that were still crossing the ocean. It was overloaded besides. She had 8 children on there, helped to overload, and she was pregnant with another one. My sister, who lies buried in Krishnagiri, India, she didn't make it. All the way she went to India back there, but then she was born in America and died in India as an infant. Dad made a little coffin around Christmas time yet. Well, she said it was overload besides, so we had no happy anticipation when we started out and little knew what was awaiting us. In Southampton, where we stopped, we saw the famous ocean liner Titanic picture. And everyone remarked how she would beat us to New York, and no doubt many envied the passengers. A few days later, after we had been on our way, there was an unusual commotion on deck. The mates seemed to measure the depth of the water, which was usually only done when the boat nears the shore. It was windy and cold, and we were told that the temperature of the water was being measured and not the depth. While passing out the usual morning lunch, one of the stewards told us about the Titanic disaster. Soon we counted from 24 to 27 big and small icebergs on both sides of the boat. We lessened speed and finally stopped altogether. We could see some of the corpses and some wreckage in the water. Soon it got foggy, though, that we could not see anything. Now, because that I told about that story, they published an article first about me in this month, the monthly paper for the Southern California District of the Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod, and my picture on there without a face, telling that I discovered rare books. The next one was the next issue already. I had my lighter. We don't record. And the man wrote me, it was interested in me, his name was Keith Balzer. I want to know more about that because I belong to the Titanic Society. Dear Reverend Naumann, many thanks for your letter and article. I wrote an article about the floating city. Both were informative and fascinating. He told me they're still doing research and that Jacques Cousteau wanted to know some more about it. I felt so honored. Jacques Cousteau, the man on TV with a cap on, kind of when I go to bed. Oh yes, and he tells me that I should, that he notices that Mrs. Lundy, the lady who wrote an article here, a grandson wrote of his mother, Mrs. Lundy, who was one of the survivors. When asked by her son, could not recall whether or not the Titanic's band played Near My God to Thee. How many think they did? Oh, yes. All right, you weren't there. Was you there, Charlie, huh? During the Titanic's liner's final hour. There has long been a controversy over whether it was that hymn or the Episcopal hymn Autumn. Although Near My God to Thee has always been part of the Titanic legend, many witnesses, including the Titanic's junior wireless operator Harold Bride, insisted it was Autumn. And then he quotes from the book The Titanic End of a Dream by Wynne Craig Wade, that he also favors Autumn. Well, I like both melodies, and I like especially Near My God to Thee. That was in the movies. Now this lady, Mrs. Lundy, was very surprised that they should fool around and take pictures. They showed her the movie of the Night to Remember, and they didn't save anybody. Well, she was a very sincere lady, and she, on that day, she always remembered God in her prayers, who protected that lonely, non-English-speaking Finnish girl on her trip on the Titanic. Now I'm ready for questions. You'd like to ask me anything you want. I don't promise to answer a thing.
How much do you know about the Lutheran Church in Winchester, Virginia? Do you know anything about it?
Where? In
Winchester, Virginia.
Winchester?
It was one of the first ones built.
Very early.
Yeah. Muhlenberg was one of
Yeah,
the...
he was. Well, I don't know too much about that particular church. I think I saw it. I was in Gettysburg. I was there and visited at the historical conference. And I know another church there, it's in Tulpehoek. You know what that is? Pennsylvania. Well, that's where Muhlenberg met a lady by the name of Weiser. Since he was wiser than he would, he married her. And I met Frederick Weiser, a descendant of that lady, not of Muhlenberg, of course. And he told me about Conrad Weiser. And near that church is a grave. In that grave lies the body of a lady who once was captured by the Indians. And Conrad Weiser made exchange of people. The Indians had captured certain people, grew up among the Indians. He made exchange during the French and Indian War. And this lady supposed to pick out her daughter among those captives. She couldn't remember anything to connect her with it. So she stopped next to a young Indian woman. Of course, about 8 years later, she had grown into a young woman. But she looked blonde hair. It couldn't be an Indian. And the man urged her, Conrad Weiser, don't you know anything? Oh, I know a song I used to sing to her. Allein und doch nicht ganz allein bin ich in meiner Einsamkeit. Alone yet not all alone am I in my lonesomeness. And she sang that. And that girl ran to her mother. That was a beautiful story. It's actually true, too. Yes, go ahead.
The reason I asked that was that my great-grandfather's name was found on the cornerstone of the church in Winchester. I went there last year. He was Christian Schumacher. When they translated him, it was George Schumacher.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Spell it S-H-O-E or make it.
Yeah, they changed the names. Like they changed the article change. Yes, Schumacher, by the way, I had a Schumacher who was archivist, and I was assistant archivist, and he lived in Anaheim. Reverend John Schumacher. He passed away, but he was a wonderful archivist. I took over from him, so that's a wonderful name. Will you get in contact with the records of that church? Did you have any?
Well, I went there, and the one day that I had there, they were closed.
Oh. That sounds like it.
Who to contact.
Well, how about writing to the archivist of that church? He must have belonged to the old ministerium yet, around that time. But they would be under the archives of the LCA in Mount Airy, Pennsylvania. Seminary there.
Mount
Airy. Hey, you come up later on and look up the material here. Yes, ma'am.
Through St. Louis, my husband's two families belong to the church on Southbury Street and Natural Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
His grandfather in 1954 was 100 years old, and he was the oldest member of that church. I sent his picture there with all the information. They didn't answer my letter. I sent a contribution. They cashed the check, but no answer to my letter. Then I called them. And when we visited St. Louis, then I called them again. Nothing. They sent me out to the college. I went out there.
Which college was it? Seminary? Concordia Seminary.
Yes.
Yes.
Which was very disappointing to us.
I'm sorry.
Now, I'm wondering where I can write for these records. Are some of the records available, or some of them just destroyed?
The records are available. In fact, where did you go to at the seminary? Did you go to the Concordia Historical Institute?
On Nuns?
Yes, DeMont Avenue, yes. But then you're in front of the seminary, you come to Luther statue, and he doesn't talk anymore. But when you go through the whole seminary, past the big Luther Tower, you walk all the way to one corner of it, there you find the Historical Institute. And somebody should have directed you.
Well, they gave us some films, and there was just 2 readers, and it was back in there for staff only. There was just, it wasn't a place where you could do research really for. And we didn't find anything. It was very disappointing to us because I
It must have been.
had a letter from them, and they said we might have some records for you. But when we went there was...
Well, I would certainly write to them in a gentle way and tell them somehow or the other they were mistreated there and hope they can better their manners. Right?
They were very pleasant people, but it was just
Yeah.
disappointing.
Well, the results were disappointing. Well, isn't that so often in research that you do?
I have a history of them here in the United States. They came, one family came in 1867.
Oh, way back.
And the 2 families were married in the Bethlehem church. We went to the Bethlehem cemetery. The superintendent there was terrific. took us
He helped you there.
Yes.
Good.
But now, would there be newspapers with the arrivals of the Germans into the St. Louis area?
That has been documented in great detail in a book called Zion on the Mississippi. Now, if you give me your name, let me know more about it later on. We can find you that book. Perhaps you can look up the whole history and get the whole list of all the passengers that came over. But whether it was but they came over in 39 already, see? 39, 40. So yours came later. There are passenger lists, as you know, available in many genealogical societies. They have them. Yes. You look through them.
I have that where they came into New Orleans to the Mississippi.
Yeah. Well, I hope you have better luck in finding more from
There, all the life and the property and
everything there.
Very churchy people, so.
Wonderful. Well, keep at it.
Well,
Enjoy it. I mean, have fun. This is
I am.
looking good. You look like a funny, not a funny person, a happy person.
The book's name is The Great One.
Yes, yes, thank you. This man here, please.
I'm researching records in Poland, on evangelic church records, and they list in the baptism and the birth records godparents.
Yes.
Would you have any general feel? Are these always relatives that are the godparents?
Usually, but not always. The godparents are spouses, see? They promise to bring up the child in case the parents die. So they usually are older people than the child is baptized. Then they're very sincere and about that, and usually are relatives, yes.
How many would there be?
They're up to 4 even, or 6, depending on how important the person thinks his child is.
And
Get more gifts that way.
most of the records I was looking at, it seemed to be a husband and wife.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that common?
That's very common, yeah, husband and wife. They figure that one of them doesn't do it, the next one will.
Okay, but in other cases, there was like 4 people and none of them seemed to be related to each
That
other.
can happen, definitely.
But they would most likely all be
Interesting.
relatives, though?
Yes, I would think at least they belong to that congregation, you can be sure of that. Usually if it's a Lutheran church, they won't bother with getting Catholic sponsors there. I had to wait to baptize me for a whole month because my grandmother was just my new grandmother. My grandfather married again. I had to be notified first, and yes, say yes. There was someone there. Yes, this lady here.
Were all the Germans, I'm sure this is not true, but if they were not Lutherans when they came from Germany, what other church might they be affiliated with?
If they were not Lutheran, they could be affiliated with evangelical church, see? Germany, at a time, the Prussian, they made a decision to unite, the Prussian Union, the Union they called it. Germans said, that is the Prussian government, that the Reformed and Lutherans were so much alike, why don't you all go to one same church, and then depends upon what the majority wants, and mix the thing up. Well, that is what occurred during the time, during the middle part or early part of the 19th century. So that's why the Missouri Synod originated.
Well, say in the 1500s. That would be before that.
Oh, way beyond. 15. Way back there. You would find they would be Lutheran, Protestant. There were, of course, Anabaptist sects, other groups that are condemned in the Formula Concord, listed, in fact, according to the errors. They then became more evangelical and turned into the beautiful Baptist group that is best in Bible studies of all churches I know. Carry their Bible with them. So look in all Protestant denominations. Don't hesitate to search there too in those churches. All right? Yes.
I had some new neighbors that came over some years ago from Germany, and they were Baptist.
That can be.
They said in Germany they would take so much of their wages right out of their pay, and they didn't like that. So
Then they quit. Yeah, that's what they call tithing, I guess, in a forcible way. Double tithe. Back there, lady. That was good. You use beer for communion?
No, they used to joke about eating wine.
Yeah, but they always said, well, we don't mind. Well, there is a movement afoot nowadays. There's an emphasis on alcohol being so destructive of family life and everything. Some people are alcoholics and they shouldn't take even a sip. But I say I never heard that just a mere sip or moistening your lips with a little wine would drive you to drink. You otherwise stay away from it. Join the AAA. What?
What's the nature of the records that are in the various archives?
The nature of the records can be so various that I have to say from German long script, notes and so on that have to be deciphered first and then translated, or they can be in church books of German, written in German always, usually beautifully written, but if you don't know German, what they call Frakturschrift, you're in trouble right away. But somebody can be found that will do that work for you there.
Did they bring any records from the old country, or are there...
Oh yes. Not only that, they brought books. And if you have Bibles, don't fail enough to look at the front part of the Bible. Sometimes in the middle of the Bible, you find extra pages where the family history is in. I found a Bible that had names in there but no dates. I found an old hymnal that had notes all over the back. It told exactly when a cow would have a calf. A farmer kept track of that there. Well, those who were German farmers came over and became good farmers here. Way back there.
When a family would immigrate from, like, when they first came into this country, and they would immigrate, or migrate, I should say, further west, and you find their records, the church records, in the Lutheran church book, did they have any such thing as transferring records from one locality? Did the church transfer records from one locality to another?
Not as a rule, unless it was a group that split away and went as a group to another place, take their church records along. They stayed with the church or with the pastor. Often the elder was supposed to take care of it, forgot about it, and left it up in his attic, and it was discovered many years later. So search goes on and on. That's why I said we find things in attics. I did, and in garages.
What I'm thinking about is when I find a Lutheran church record in the early 1800s, and say, for example, in Ohio, and you know they keep Pennsylvania, I'm trying to figure out how I could find what Lutheran church they came from in Pennsylvania. But if they transferred records, maybe they could...
No. Those old records are kept carefully. If they are found, they're turned in as being pure gold. Those are real fine. Archaeologists and archivists and historians know what that means, like digging up an old ruin of Babylon. But, yes.
Because you know, if in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
Does the Lutheran Church keep record of
Oh, yes.
their, I have an interesting family background. My German family, Lutherans, left Germany in 1757 and went to Russia.
Mm.
And they maintained a Lutheran community there
Yes.
until in the late 19th century. When the Tsar then changed a lot of rules and they couldn't keep their German language and their German church and so forth, so they began immigrating to the United States.
What part of Russia?
It's on the Volga River near
Yeah.
Sarata.
Yeah. Well, even there are records. It isn't altogether that every church is all outlawed. However, you must remember there are wars, have been wars, destroyed many records. When you speak about having people who are, I thank my cousin, the daughter of that NATO bubonic plague, doing a big job on my family history here. And she found there a picture of my great-grandfather, Robert Simpson and Francis Simpson Booker. Now, she writes about them that they were in Odessa and were married there in Lutheran Church. And so I'm 1/8 Scotch. What a drink, huh? Sauerkraut, 7 parts, and 1/8 Scotch. I wouldn't try it, though.
But you say there are records in Germany?
Yes, in Germany. She found these records. She couldn't have found all this unless she went to the records of churches and cemeteries. Now, the churches, the Wilcom, that's my mother's family, goes way back to 1500. But the Naumann does not. There, the wars destroyed it. Especially 30 Years' War has done terrible harm to records and churches. Also this last war, naturally. But don't lose heart. There's always some clue somewhere which is so light. Some relative somewhere kept some notes, something. And that's what they're looking for. That's the fun of it is to search.
And for the Historical Institute has a lot of...
The Historical Institute has many, many records of congregations, defunct even. They send them in. I have 3 congregations in L.A. that are no longer exist, and I have their records. I was asked one time to find the birthplace of birth date of a man born in Savannah, Georgia, because their church record had been burnt. And I found his name in a wedding notice. When he was married, they put down his date of birth. So there we had it. Thank God for faithful ministers who took records and put them down that way.
My husband's grandmother belonged to the Concordia Women's Organization. I guess that was...
Concordia Women's Organization.
According to her the obituary.
Yes, well, it was a large group of just at local. Could have been a congregation. We have a congregation called Concordia. I was pastor first in Concordia, Kirkwood.
She was
Church.
in St. Louis at the Bethlehem Church.
Oh, yeah, but she belonged to a group, Concordia Women, Frauenverein, maybe.
Would there be records of
Yes.
that women's group?
No doubt there would be. You have to go know how far you want to go back in that, and know whether any records exist at all of a church. If you have records, you have for instance, 50th anniversary book that will show the Frauenverein or Concordia Ladies Guild or Martha Guild or something like that.
What I'm trying to find out is where they came from in Germany.
In
Because
Germany,
I
yeah.
understand they had to give papers to the new church, didn't they?
Yes.
Papers to...
Papers. They had to sign and tell you where they came from. And I found an old record of an extinct congregation called Zionsgemeinde Palmental. And they actually listed there where they came. Russland, it said there. It said Schweiz, Switzerland. And they said Süddeutschland, which means southern Germany. So you could it didn't say the exact place, though, see?
Bethlehem is still in existence, isn't it? But Bethlehem is still in existence. Yes.
Yeah, they should help you with it.
I talked to the minister when we were in St. Louis.
We did quite a bit of research. You're ahead of people. Imagine having an ancestor with no photograph but a picture like that. Is she cute? And her husband here, he had 19 children. Bach had 20, by the way. Johann Sebastian Bach. I'm going to celebrate his birthday, too. And so I wish to close at this time and thank you for your wonderful attention to archivist, a has-been, and one who is trying to keep on going and not stopping either, helping other people. I'd like to help you more than I could. Those who have special questions, we'll try to answer some of it through this. I'll put it all up here, it's too heavy. I spoke last to the Southern California Genealogical Society. Now I spoke to the wonderful society here. Thank you, everybody.